UK charities have warned of devastating council cuts to women's services. We're going to read into this more from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from The Guardian with the headline that UK charities are warning of devastating council cuts to women's services. Those dealing with violence against women are most at risk as local authorities trying to balance the budgets, experts say. Guys, while you're here, if you can, hit the like button and share across social media so others are notified of this video. So as you guys know, councils are struggling right now to make ends meet, to be able to meet their budgets. And we know that it's been happening up and down across the whole of England in particular. And this is because of the lack of funding that governments have been providing to them. Some councils have poorly mismanaged their budgets, but one of the key things why councils are in the situation that they are in is because of the 14 years of austerity. Yes, Brexit and some global factors have played a factor into the states that the councils are in, and there's no question about that. However, the austerity that has taken place since the Conservatives have come to power, the cutbacks that councils have had to make has gotten to so much to the point now that councils really just don't have any money. And now some of the most important charities, some of the most important work in some of the most sensitive of things are now having to be forced to be cut in a way just in order for them to scrape by. And this story here is deeply heartbreaking because there are many stories out there of women who feel that they cannot trust the police to go to the police when they are suffering from domestic violence, sexual assault, rape, simply because of how goddamn awful our police service is, and we've talked about that here on this channel already. But the fact that these charities, which are like in a way can also be seen as a safe space for these women, to lose them is deeply frustrating to say the least. And my heart really does go out to any women out there who've experienced any kinds of these abuses in any way, shape or form. And it really does upset me that there could be cuts to these services, especially at a time when they need them more than ever before. And it's really gut wrenching. You know, we're supposed to be there. Governments are supposed to be there. Councils are supposed to be there. The state is supposed to be there to support people. They're supposed to be there for you. And instead of being there for you, they've literally abandoned you. And that's kind of the emphasis of what's been happening with the last 14 years. This is a political party that have really have abandoned any kind of care or lack of care for ordinary people on all sorts of fronts. Not just this terrible story, but on countless fronts they have. And while it is an election year, or a general election year, it's important to remember that there are people that if you're suffering, or if you know of people who are suffering, just remember that whatever you might think of Labour, it would not be as bad as this. I generally don't think that. So domestic abuse charities and centres dealing with sexual violence says council budget cuts will have a devastating impact on support for women, warning that entire services will have to close as local authorities strip back to basics. Charities says the most aspect of the service were non-statutory, meaning councils do not have a legal obligation to keep funding them and are likely to cut them as they try to balance their budgets amid a nationwide funding crisis. What they will try to do is try and get but they will try and set up fundraisers in order to keep these charities going, so that the state can no longer provide for them in order to keep them going. Basically, essentially, they'll be asking members of the public who have money to hand out their money to help keep these charities going, as opposed to the state being able to provide that service for those women. That's essentially what it's going to end up doing. But if people don't hand out their money, it means that these services are going to go, which means these women won't have anywhere to go to talk about these issues. Violence against women's services are among these most at risk, said Mary-Ann Stephenson of the Women's Budget Group. As local authorities are cutting to the bone, there is basically nothing left to cut, so everything that is non-statutory is going. Women's Aid, a federation of about 180 domestic abuse services across England, says services in areas where local authorities have had issue at Section 114 notices effectively declared bankruptcy were bracing for the worst. We're hearing from members in those areas that entire services will have to close and many staff members will have to be made redundant, said Lucy Haley, the head of policy at Women's Aid. These things will be the first to go, coming on top of a decade of funding crisis. Many of our members are really concerned that this will just have a devastating impact on continuing their services. Harley said cuts were happening at a time when domestic abuse and coercive control was being aggravated by a cost of living crisis. A Women's Aid survey found 3/4 of women in a relationship with their abuser or financially linked to them were unable to leave because of the rising cost of living. Some aspects of domestic abuse service, such as refugee and accommodation, are statutory. But Haley said members have raised concerns that funding for them was being diverted elsewhere as a result of councils' desperate financial situations. Sadly, this is not an issue decision-making priorities because it is not something that affects everyone in their community. It's not the bin services, for example, that they get lots of letters about, Haley said. We absolutely feel that this is a priority for government to fund and to ensure councils are meeting their duties on. Andrea Simons, director of the End Violence Against Women, the EVAW coalition, said many services had already had to close their waiting lists because of the rising demands and costs. Local authority budget cuts not only impact the funding they can provide for vital women's services, but leave these services to pick up the pieces when local authorities and other agencies turn them away, she said. Yeah, that's the problem. They're turning their back, the state, on these things. In Coventry, where the City Council said it is making some very difficult choices to balance its books, the Coventry Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre, Crassick, is losing £195,000 of council funding and has closed its waiting list as a result. Its CEO, Natalie Thompson, said she was gutted by the council's decision. And what are the councils supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? They just don't have the money. You just don't have the money. Where are people supposed to go now? There. We know demand is growing year on year, but we're really struggling to keep up with pace because of inflation, especially the last few years. Everything is just getting more expensive, she said. So we just had to close the waiting list because of the knock-on effect of this funding cut, as well as austerity. It's not safe for clients or our staff members anymore. The council said in a statement it was not cutting the service, but had decided not to renew its contract with Crass because it was not addressing increasing waiting lists. So they're saying it's not cutting the service, that it was not addressing the increasing waiting list. We will work with various partners to address the prevention of sexual assault and rape and assist partners in the health and care system to commission improved services for this important population, it said. Stephenson said pressure was mounting on councils as they moved to set their budgets for the next financial year, and that they were needed to be increased awareness of how important these services were. There are women whose lives are at risk and they can't safely leave violent partners who need domestic violence services. And there are women who are suffering severe trauma as a result of sexual violence, she said. These services should be securely funded and somehow they're treated as nice as you can have, then you can cut. There are certain things, guys. There are certain things that in life, certain funds, certain organisations, certain things in general, that should not be touched. That should not be cut. That should not in any way. That should be given a protective ring around, no matter how bad it gets, no matter what funding issues you have. They should be a no-go zone, basically, when it comes to supporting people in any life or matter. And this is one of them. This is one where should not be touched in any way, shape, or form. And I just don't understand why we are in this situation we are in. Why we allow these to happen. I've asked this question so many times, and I'm going to keep asking it, guys. Where is the humanity? Where is the care? There is none. There is absolutely none from this government. They do not care about you. They don't care about your problems. They don't care if you have mental health issues. They don't care if you've been sexually assaulted. They don't care if you're out of a job. They don't care if your children aren't making it. They don't care in any way, shape, or form. They don't. They talk, they talk, they talk, but they will not do anything. And I understand this frustration that many people feel that all politicians are the same. And I totally get that premise. Because even I get sick and tired of some of the U-turns that the bloody Labour Party have been doing. And I get that. But they haven't been in power for 14 years. And I will just say to you, like, until they are in power, we don't know what they're going to do. Now, do I trust Labour? Hell no, I don't trust Labour. But I tell you what, I'd rather take my chances with them than the last 14 years of what we've been going through. Because I tell you what, things were not this bad in society here in England, than they were 14 years ago. They were not. They generally were not. Now, somewhere in your head you might think that, but I've not seen it. I don't hear about it. It wasn't that bad 14 years ago. There's countless problems in the United Kingdom, in particular here in England. And what's being done to address these issues? Nothing. We have state schools who are struggling to afford to pay the bills. Bigger classrooms than ever before. I've talked numerous times about how bad our Met Police is, the Metropolitan Police and other police forces here across England, and how damaging that they are when it comes to dealing with crime. Not just dealing with crime, the lack of police forces, and not only that, some of them are institutionally racist and and the trust between the public and the police is down on its knees. No one was complaining 14 years ago about the National Healthcare Service. No one was criticising how quick it was to get a GP's appointment. No one was having those issues. And now you have openly talking about some of the people of think tanks and whatnots saying that we should privatise the NHS. You want to pay $2,000 for a cancer treatment? Because that's what they want. Like I said, Labour are not perfect. And trust me, I'm anything but a Labour person. But feck me, I'm taking my job. I would rather have a Labour government right now than a Conservative one. And this rhetoric of Labour will be worse than the Conservatives. You don't know that. It's been 14 damn years since they've been in power. Like, if you generally believe that, really? For 14 years, we've had this government completely tear this country apart. Like I said, they're not perfect, but damn, it's so infuriating. When I read stories after stories like these, it is so brutal to read these stories and talk about them. It does damage me sometimes. And I don't know how I'm able to sleep at night sometimes, knowing that the situations that people are in. What do you guys think? What should be done when it comes to UK charities? Should they be cut at all? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of you believe that they should be ring fenced and they should not be touched at all and they should be looked after. in every way, shape or form, just like many other things that should be looked after. But what are these councils supposed to do? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button, we greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further and financially support me in the work I do, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or if you want more content, you can find more on my Rumble or my Patreon. Both links are in the description. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.